What I've seen firsthand is the ability to choose the types of clients you want to work with and have an astronomical close rate.
This methodology that we're about to talk about, which is made possible only because of artificial intelligence. Prior to AI, this would have been completely unreasonable to do something like this. You can now go out there and effectively do some work that might impress the client, and you do this well, this will be so desirable. They're going to think if they don't work with you, they're going to lose something.
One in particular is unique for the AI conversation, and it's a conversation of time and value. You can spend more time on certain things for free without even thinking about it because it's so beneficial for you on the long term. You can do amazing things that would have taken months and hours, and your goal is to simply come as ready as you can to win.
You do not need to be a developer to deliver a prototype of something. This is the objective, to impress the heck out of them, to show them that you've already invested a lot of time, effort into this. But the reality is that AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us here. Is that correct? My special guest is an AI consultant who helps entrepreneurs and businesses scale with AI chatbots, automation, and AI agents. He's the creator of the AI Integrator certification, Agents, Automation, and Deployment as part of the Chief AI Officer organization. Etan Polinger, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Yeah, excited to be here. Doing great.
Yeah, apologize if I pronounced your name wrong, Etan.
It's okay.
Yeah, Etan is the proper pronunciation, folks. All right, so let's start with how'd you get into AI? I would love to kind of hear your journey into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I jumped into it, I think, goes back even more to, I started in sales and cold calling. I was after the military. I didn't know a lot what to do. So naturally, I started as a bartender, but my first real job was outbound calling. Long story short, they closed that whole group of people. They fired all the outbound callers and brought in an SEO person to do, search engine optimization. I then got fascinated with that and the technical side of the web. And also with the fact that, heck, they're going to pay this one person all the money that they paid us. And, I want to be on the other side of this. If I could do sales and to get people to come to you, that would be great. So I went into that side of things, and I was in marketing for over a decade and, started my own agency at some point, Prosperous Media. And as became part of this ecosystem. And then when AI started knocking on the door, it's kind of, I saw this moment of, oh gosh, it's the cold calling thing all over again. And really, I just wanted to jump in as quickly as I could and go for everything. I've always worked in tech and worked with development teams and have had interest in the technical side. And I've used it to some degree with marketing, but really when I saw it, as soon as everyone it started to get into the public, starting with Jasper and whatnot, in my world at least, from the generative AI perspective, that is. That's when I jumped in and invested as much as I could to learn and be in the right rooms and, be the guy who gets on that train early this time.
So tell us what you're doing these days when it comes to AI.
Yeah, so these days, what I'm doing is a few things, but mainly it's about how do we provide real value with it, right? So I work with companies, whether it be small businesses to mid-market, companies, and consulting them and finding the real value, and then building actual tools from, co-pilots, more chats, things they can engage with that work with them to help them complete the work, to agents that becomes more like a colleague or a counterpart that can actually go and do the work and develop it and create it. And I also go all the way to AI-powered applications and developing that. So it's kind of a spectrum of, the strategic roadmap, but all the way to the building. The way I like to think of it is this Harvard Business Review article I saw recently where they talked about instead of being a thought leader, becoming a thought doer. So I see it as the thought doing of AI and really taking it from these ideas into what brings actual outcomes, to the business world. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Perfect. So when it comes to using AI to help you sell, what do you believe is one of the biggest misconceptions people have when it comes to this particular thing that we're about to talk about today?
Yeah. So when coming to selling, particularly selling AI, things, but in general, I think the biggest misconception that if we talk about sales for a moment, I think that often we show up to the party thinking that we need to convince the other person to buy something. And in reality, they need to convince us that we're the right partner. And if we don't go into that right mindset, then with AI in particular, we're able to come to the table with so much that we don't have to come with this, oh, I hope they choose me. And in reality, the goal of that conversation is for them to feel this pressure that they really want it to be you. And can you take them on? And I think that's a flip of a script that we can do so much more right now with AI that takes the whole conversation to a very different place if you show up prepared and show up with the right assets and show up with the right things that you can do with AI that you would never spend the time to before. And now you can do all of it.
Got it. All right. So we're going to go pretty deep into how to use AI to help sell or pre-sell or whatever, perspective you want to come at this from. But
Sure.
What is the upside? What are the benefits when this is done well, when people pay close attention to what we're about to talk about today? What are some of the benefits that they could receive by following the advice you're going to give today?
Well, what I've seen firsthand is the ability to, really choose the types of clients you want to work with and have an astronomical close rate, where when you show up, this is likely going to be a deal. It's more of a question if you want to work with this person or not. And I think that's not to be hyperbolic about this, that's just my experience going with this and the experience of the people who I've taught to do this, where you can go into that and really increase your close rates in a pretty dramatic way.
I love that. If I think about the business that I used to run before I started Social Media Examiner, I was a writer, and I was in the business of working with large B2B brands, and I was helping them write white papers. And because I had done so much work to establish my brand reputation online, because I'd written a book, I had a blog, and I was pretty well known in the writing community, I got to be really picky when people came in and they wanted to work with me. And that is something that is not necessarily true today, but I think it's possible, is what I'm hearing you say, if you do what we're about to talk about today, which I think is what everybody wants. Everybody wants to be able to be super picky about who they get to work with instead of having to work with people that are not fun to work with or are not an ideal fit for them. So this is kind of a bridge to my next question. When it comes to selling and when it comes to AI, is there any mindset shifts, you've kind of hinted a little bit, or any things we need to lay groundwork for before we get into talking about artificial intelligence and how it can affect and help in this way?
Definitely. I think the concepts that I would want people to keep in mind when about to apply this are the same ones that would have worked in many other settings, but now we can, really deploy them. And one particular is unique for the AI conversation, and it's the conversation of time and value, which has completely, the world of my time and value and how much do I charge per hour, these things have completely gone to who knows how to measure some of this, right? So that's where we're in right now, which is I can provide something that would have cost people $100,000 in a week. And then you wonder, well, what does that mean? Can I charge that? Will people pay that? So where I'm going with this is the mental model of you can spend more time on certain things for free without even thinking about it because it's so so beneficial for you on the long term. So if you're going to put preparation into a meeting with someone, like we're about to discuss in a moment, I think it's important to note that this conversation of, well, I'm not going to do it if it's not going to pay me, or I'm not going to do, or how much time should I spend? It's really just about your goal is to get a deal. So we got to first reframe this conversation in. You can do amazing things that would have taken months and hours. And your goal is to simply come as ready as you can to win, not to, you're not worried about anything else. So the win focus and doing what's required before you meet and not worrying about the time. And I think there's a few things there, but we can decode that later. Another thing that I think is important. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Okay. So just one more thing there, and I think this is important, is this concept that's been pretty well known for marketers in behavioral economics world, which is, loss aversion. So it's way more powerful when people show up and they, or when they have something to lose versus something to gain when they're pursuing something. So the goal of this conversation when we use AI is to, this mental model of how am I going to show up with them already having something to lose the moment they leave the conversation. Right. And it's kind of like this person's already in the game. Right. So it's kind of this reframe of you showing up. And that's part of that first frame that we talked about. You do all this work. You're almost already working with this person in a way. And there's value to show it. And that's when I get really kind of this little hook of, oh, if I don't choose this person, I actually have something to lose now. And I almost have to start over with someone else. So that's just a few mental frames that I think are healthy for this discussion.
Love it. So why don't we talk about conceptually what is the concept here, right? Because we have hinted at it, but we haven't really described it a little bit. You've hinted that there's some preparation that we need to know and we need to do. So let's unravel a little bit of what this is, what's involved here, and just to kind of set the groundwork that this is a different way of selling than maybe the way most people are familiar with selling.
Right. Fair enough. So, I ran this, this is a piece that I discussed when we talk about you mentioned at the beginning that I teach this AI integrator program. And a big part of it is how do we sell ideas, with AI. So it's not just, yes, it's for selling to other companies as a consultant, but it's also internally, if you work inside of a company, how do I get prepared and ready for selling in my idea with this? And what we're talking about today is that process that we go through pre-meeting before, whether there's an idea or a direction or not, and how do we take that idea and we scope it into a focus we can actually go all the way through into developing some type of branded asset that relates to it, whether it be a prototype or a deliverable, a PDF, a PowerPoint, whatever it may be that's on brand and focus, so that people already see that you're not only understanding what the issue might be or what you're suggesting the idea, it almost feels like you understand their business and understand what they're dealing with and understand their language. So you show up almost one of them, which is another, by the way, frame, but from Cialdini, right? The likeness. So we show up and we're like them already. We have this idea. We've already done the homework that, if you're out there as a marketing agency and the pain of trying to collect assets from a client or, trying to get these kind of, marketing assets, we can grab all that already without even talking to them. So we grab the assets, we grab the idea, we go through a research process to quickly identify the best way forward. And then we develop a quick prototype, whether it be not a application or full agent, but just it can be a prototype of a document, even outlining this. It can be all of those things. But the idea is we have an idea, a direction, we scope it out, we get some research behind it, and then we mold it into a on-brand kind of asset that people can see and get their hands on, something tangible that they have now if they start the progress with you.
Okay, so let me go ahead and just translate a little bit of this for everybody in the audience, just to make sure everybody's processing this. This methodology that we're about to talk about, which is made possible only because of artificial intelligence. Prior to AI, this would have been completely unreasonable to do something like this. You can now go out there and basically effectively do some work that you may never get paid for, that they might say no to, but might impress the client, and sometimes the client is someone inside the business if you work inside of a larger business, or the client might be a future somebody who's going to pay you money. But if you do what Etan says, then, and you do this well, this will be so desirable, right, by the other party that they're going to think if they don't work with you, they're going to lose something that you've already created. Am I hearing you properly? Is that kind of effectively what you're talking about?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're looking to create that wow moment from the beginning, right? That wow, okay, I have something real here. And not just like a gimmick, not just like a whatever, just something that actually can help with the business. And that's kind of what we're going for with this is we can use AI to do the work of many over a long time in a short amount of time. And we would never do it before. It's rooted in real principles. Just now we can actually all leverage it as individuals or small teams or big teams, whatever, but we can all do it. And that's the point. AI enables us to do the best practices that a scale would do, but on a smaller, more lethal unit.
Real quick, I know that you're watching this video because you want to master AI, but let's be honest, AI feels overwhelming, right? Which tool, which workflow, where do you even start? But while you're figuring it out, there are marketers in your industry becoming invaluable to their organizations. They're not working longer hours. They've just mastered AI implementation, and that's given them true job security. Here's what made the difference: the AI Business Society. It's where you get practical training from expert practitioners who show you real workflows, not theory. You join a community of marketers solving the same problems you're facing. You get access to strategies you can implement immediately. You go from overwhelmed to confident, from confident to indispensable, from indispensable to untouchable. You're the one your boss turns to, the one getting the first pick on new projects, the one whose position is secure. Want that? Check out aibusinesssociety.info to learn more. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is start a little with an example. We talked when we were prepping for this that you had an example of a deal that you had closed. The reason I want to start with that story is to help people understand a little bit about what you did, and then we can reverse engineer kind of how you did it, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, of course. So a good example, so there was a post in a community that I'm a part of, and I saw this kind of, desire for someone was saying, hey, we're looking to do some type of chat widget we can embed in different places that has our kind of knowledge in it. We have these kind of things we're looking for. Is this overall like idea of what they're looking for? When I looked at it honestly, it didn't even look like that stack didn't even make a lot of sense. They obviously like went to ChatGPT and had some type of desire that they've inputted into the world. But when I looked at it, again, it's kind of the first thing I want to do is understand the signal versus the noise, right? So I take that request, I say, what are they actually wanting here? Oh, they want their own controlled platform that they can build chat widgets that they can embed on their website. And this chat widget would have information that they have their own intellectual property. And it'll be able to answer questions on this. Now, there's a lot of ones out there you can use, but they wanted their own kind of custom one, right? So that was kind of the first step is that identification of what are they actually wanting, right? So if you're doing this for someone who you don't know what they want, it's a bit harder, but you can try and identify what they might need. But the starting point was that in this example, and we can work through, I can just walk through that use case, end to end, what happened there, and then we can decode it a bit. So, the first step is identifying to actually, yeah.
Real quick on the what do they want side of it. Sometimes some people are coming into organizations that don't even know who they are, and they're coming in cold. Other times they might be part of a Facebook group, or they might be part of a paid community, or maybe they meet them at an event. So let's just talk through a little bit of like how we can get a little bit of intelligence, if possible, if you have any tips on how to really understand what they want before we go down part of the next
absolutely step. And this is my favorite. Sometimes it's as simple as a prompt of, I know nothing about what they asked for. You go into an language or ChatGPT. It's like, I just saw this message, copy paste. What do they want in one sentence that anyone can understand? What do they actually want? What are they trying to get here? And then if it, again gets, it can tell you back, oh, they're wanting a chat widget, right? So even in a simple way, just a simple, if you really don't know, and I've often, even with meeting transcripts, I may take a moment because I'm using a tool and it's live transcribing, and I might say, what the hell are they saying here? Right? What do they want in one sentence? Give it back to me in a simple sentence. What's the one thing that they're trying to accomplish here? Right? Just to get an idea real quick. So that is one way you can do it. There's, of course, with time and with expertise, when you'll see, understand. But if you don't know anything about it, and often in new industries in AI, you can go into any type of industry. It's so much opportunity. You won't know a lot about the industries you go into. So you do need to kind of query that and say, well, what does this mean? Right? And I think that's a simple enough way to get started.
Do you give them the name of the person and maybe the company also, so your AI can do a little research on it, or do you just give them give AI the statement and have AI reverse engineer what they really mean by that statement?
So that would be like a phase here. I first understand what they want, and then I would go into a bit more research about them and see where the context fits to who they are. Right. So that would be the first thing I do. Right. So what do they actually want here? And then I would say, because this changes the conversation, by the way, because I don't have to come with that stack. I don't have to know that stack. I need to know the outcome thereafter, which is the focus that I always talk about is, we want to be outcome oriented. And the outcome is they want to chat with. It doesn't matter. They don't care if it's JavaScript or they don't know half of what that means on the other side of that. What they do care is to have the widget, and there's 100,000 tools out there. Some are free, some are not. Some you can build that do that. So, the world opens once you just say, what do they actually want versus the how to get there. Most people don't know how they want to get anywhere. They just know what they want. And we got to get even clear on that.
Okay, real quick. What about if you're doing cold outreach and you don't have any public posts inside of any social platforms or anything like that? Is this typically where you are interacting with them at first and getting a couple answers to questions before you go ahead and move on with this research?
So it's a good, so to clarify what I actually do there, I don't go back with an answer yet necessarily. I first see, it took me about And this seems like maybe, I don't know how long people think this takes, but it took about a few minutes, right, to gather that of where are they, what do they want, and then to say back to them, I think I can help you, let's meet. And like I just got it. I think we can do that, right? So that's an easy one on that side. Now, if you're outreaching and you're, and which we do, if we see a company we want to work with or an idea or something that just shows up and you want to reach out to a person. Now, not everyone's just throwing out there what they want, which would be ideal, right? But in a lot of cases, there are companies where they are posting, they have job posts, they're showing you what they're trying to accomplish often, right? They may not be saying it. One way to do it is also use AI to analyze their job postings, analyze their whatever they have online, if they have it. If it's a small business, of course, it's harder. If it's a construction company in Albuquerque, where I'm from, not where I am right now, but if it's where they are, it'd be much harder to find that information. But even then, maybe it's worthwhile to figure out a bit more about them, right? So we can try and understand where they are in the market, what they're doing, who they're hiring, and we can possibly get a better idea of what they're trying to accomplish. There's these containers that each business is in, right? If you're below 7 figures, if you're above 7 figures, if you're above 8 figures, if you're above 9, there's these like clear things you're trying to accomplish in each one of those steps often, right? To unlock that next step of growth for the business. And they're always kind of similar, playbooks are happening in each to unlock the next part of that puzzle. So it's not necessarily, there's nothing new under the sun, right? There's the things that they're trying to do in that, and then how it fits to their context and their market. And I think if we think from that, we use AI for that, we get some ideas and we go with that.
Okay, cool. So let's get back to your example. You're obviously in some sort of a group and somebody posts something, and keep going with the story.
Yeah. So now, there's an idea, understanding what they're trying to accomplish, reaching out saying, I can help. In this case, very simple. But what happens in the next phase is what it gets interesting, right? Before this, great, let's, set up the time, before we're setting up the time, before the meeting's happening, once I said I can help, I get already invested in it, right? So mentally now, in my mind, me and this person are going to, likely work together. Let me get prepared on what they want. Let me learn about the person, the company, the market, where AI is working there right now. And this involves essentially a series of prompts that are focused and specific, right? So the more we try to broaden our prompts, right? So they try to do too much. Say I'm going to research the person or research the company. I would want to research each one individually, right? Because not that it can't handle it, but I want the depth and the focus on that category and all the compute and the focus of the language model or the tool that I'm using to really focus in on that. So one, the person, who am I selling to, right? This person was connecting me to an owner of the company, right? Who's this owner? What do I need to know about them? What are they saying online? What are their stances? If I can even understand a bit more about their anything from political ideology to problems they face to legal stuff they may have gone into to whatever it may be, really just as much recon as I can, just understand the person, right? Because if you can understand the person, find some language that might work, find the language that they like to use, how they describe certain innovations if they're out there, you can learn quite a bit. Focus on a company. What's the company? What's their model? What are they actually, trying to accomplish? And then the industry, particularly with AI, what's happening right now in AI? They want a chat widget. Who's out there doing, the widgets for these types of companies? What is it? How is AI being used right now? What opportunities are being? Just really taking a broad moment. This sounds like a lot. This can be done in an hour, right? Of you just sitting and reading some articles that you create for yourself from search, right? I do recommend deep research. And for those of you who are probably thinking, well, where and how and all of those things, any deep research tool would really do enough for that. What type of prompt? I would recommend you start by just asking it to build you a deep research prompt for what you're wanting to research. And that will get you already to the 80% ahead, right? Now, yes.
Real quick. On the deep research, yeah. So I've used deep research quite a bit. I would imagine we're going to have a deep research prompt just for the person, right? And another one for the company.
Yep.
Right? So each of these things is specifically a prompt. Deep research on that company and on that person, and there may be competitive and competitors and stuff like that.
Yes. So understanding them, their company, competitor, but then the market and opportunity with AI and what's happening right now. Right? Because if people have already figured out what you're maybe going to figure out, it's better, right? So, friends, if I know, in this case, I know they're wanting their own little chat building platform, that's good news, but also it means we need to understand what else is out there like it. If I haven't built one like that before, a good place to be is what else? There's all these widget tools that I'm not competing with them because they're just them. I'm just doing it for this person, right? So I need to understand how they did it if I never done it before. And AI is really good at patterns and understanding how things are structured. It can give me a good idea of how people have done what they might want already, or how they've tried to.
I love this because right now I am actively looking for a gutter shield for my house. And I've done some research, and I started on YouTube, and then I went and I had a deep research assignment done because I want to understand the state of the marketplace. And it's safe to assume that your prospect probably knows and has done some research on their own. So it's in your best interest to understand what the alternatives are. What are the out of the box solutions they could choose? What are the pros and cons to that? All that information, when you present all that to them, eventually, I would imagine that makes you more credible in their eyes, right?
Absolutely. And they may even offer it as a sub option. Say, hey, if you don't want to build it, I'll set up one of those other platforms for you, no problem, for this cost. Right.
Right.
Again, it's about value for the client. So we want to, one door opens many with AI because there's so much people want to do. So even if you're in at the smaller scale than what you thought you're in, and if you prove the value, which you can if you do it right with AI, then you can build upon that and have many more projects together. Right. So that's kind of in my mind, it becomes just another option on the table, plus building blocks for me to learn better how to design the solution that they may want.
Okay, so is there any other part of the research part that we've really been focusing on this research phase, if you will?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that we should talk about before we move on to the next part of the process here?
I think once you understand the person, the company, the market, and the AI opportunities, then you're in a good place to at least for now, you don't really, there's more you can go into, and I certainly do, but those would be a core things you may want to come in with that show that you are in the game. You know what they're up against, you know what's happening, you know who they are. Even if you never uttered a word about it, this is just like, even if you never say anything about the research you did, which ideally you don't, you just show up with that preparation ready and it shows up naturally. You're not like, I prepared a brief for you. No, you just come with it prepared. And if if it comes up naturally, the better.
So do they already, have you done this before you've even reached out and said, I can help? Is this part of the process already done? Or are you waiting for them to say, yes, I'm interested in your help before you do this? I'm just curious, like the order of operations here.
It's happened in either way. I always do the same things. But yeah, this is me. This example, this story is me reaching out saying I can help. Right. Yeah. So this is the.
But you've done the research before you reached out and said I could help, or did you do it after they indicated they were interested in a conversation?
Once I understand the actual solution, so that's a really good distinction, right? There's the prior to the conversation, let me understand the solution they want. Can I help? Once I can help. Now, to what degree and how good can I make it, or what style and how do I start to personalize it? That's when I start to research them. First, it's if I understand what they may be after, I'm like, can I actually do that? Or do I want to understand that a bit more, right? So in this case, I understood it enough so I can progress. If I didn't, I would do a bit more research on it, see if I can actually configure it, right? Then I would move into the next piece, which is more about elevation and optimization, less about the core, can I do this, right? So I'm confident enough to say I can help if I can do the solution. Then it's about how do we make this even better.
What about using their language and echoing some of that language back? Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know you have a background as a marketer.
Yeah, that's a great point. So everything we collect when we're researching the person, and this could include, by the way, right, finding ideal, in the ideal world, everyone does YouTube videos or podcast interviews, and you can grab those transcripts and see exactly the language they use, right? And try to assess them, as a person. But what I've done before too is just go to their, whatever profile they have publicly, websites, LinkedIn, scrape it, because that's whatever they say about themselves on those self-owned profiles, what they want to say about them to the world, which in itself can tell us quite a bit. Once we have that, then whatever deliverable I send in writing, or when I'm thinking about certain, and I often talk to, AI before this, and I say, well, what are some words, I should consider for this, or what are some phrases? I don't rehearse this to the point where I'm now like an actor and I have like a script thread that is perfect. I'm sure someone who goes to that degree, that would be amazing. I can't do that, but right, they can create a script for that person. That would be great. You should do it, whoever's doing that. But in this case, I'm simmering my mind in it, and I kind of get myself into that mode where I'm probably going to use some of that naturally, or it's going to pop up when I need it. And when I'm actually giving the written deliverables, it will have their language and their words in it, as it's seasoned in within, how they talk about these things.
Okay, so up to this point, you've engaged in some sort of a dialogue with this person, this prospect, and you have done a lot of research to really understand where they are, who they are, and kind of what the options are for them in this particular case because you're offering some sort of AI service. What's the next part of the process, and what are kind of the options of what you can do here? Because obviously, I know where this is going, and not everyone is going to want to do something to the level at which you offered. So let's talk a little bit about like what are the options here? You know?
Yeah, I mean, so this part of the fun too, though, of the AI world, right? And they really it can start to go to so many places, and I really do believe the most important part is one we just kind of went over. If done right, the rest becomes easy because the tools are getting so much better, right? But the next
Right.
part is to start to decide on which deliverable we're about to come with, right? So, in my example, was to actually create a prototype, a working prototype of the chat widget creation tool, right? In their brand and everything. And more than that, also the deliverable was a whole deck on the options and their color, branding, logo, everything with screenshots from the prototype app. So I actually created the app before I sent the proposal for the even meeting for them to consider, right? And it seems like a lot, but really it's kind of like scratch paper, right? So you got to think of it as right now, it's everything's so capable that I wouldn't care, and I have no ego, and like it's like, oh, okay, we'll do another one. Right? So the idea here is now to start to mold it across and to make deliverables on their brand, and that's where we're going to go into a discussion of how do we collect it and mold it into that actual deliverable. And there are some options for this that we can open up
Yeah.
now.
And I want to just address a couple things here. Do you have a background as a developer? Are you a developer?
No, I'm not a developer at all. I mean,
Okay.
I'm somewhat these days. I've shipped about 12 apps. Feels like it, but I'm not. I'm
But-
not a developer. No.
Okay. So, you do not, those that are listening, you do not need to be a developer to deliver a prototype of something, right? And you can use AI to rapidly create something that's very impressive, which is the objective here, right? This is the objective, to impress the heck out of them, to show them that you've already invested a lot of sweat equity, for lack of better words, time, effort into this. But the reality is that AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us here. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be even more, like if I just do a 1 minute story on this, but I walked into a room with there's probably about 20 CTOs in it, all for companies doing, range between say 20 to 100 million a year. Right. Sitting there, and obviously I'm a little intimidated. These people are obviously from the high, very high technical degree of accomplishments between all of them. And we're in this kind of breakout session where I'm kind of supposed to lead this conversation. And they were talking amongst themselves, saying the word vibe coding, which I'm sure everyone's heard by now. If not, it's just kind of, talking to AI that codes. And and they all started giggling and laughing, right? And I was like, oh, is that funny? It's like, oh, yeah, it's vibe coding. I was like, oh, well, is it funny to that 15-year-old who sold his app for, what was it, 15 million or something from Lovable? I was like, wait a minute, what? 15-year-old, 15 million or 5 million, millions. Anyway, a kid sold for millions now. And I told him, look, it's simple. It's because no one cared about the quality or the beauty of the code. It cared that it's safe enough and that it actually delivers and solves a problem and gets to an outcome that people are wanting, right? You could be a great developer, but if you can't do that thing, then, and everyone got a bit quiet. And it's because these tools, if you're clear enough of where you're trying to get to, and you have just enough of the right frameworks, you can get unbelievably far, and more so every single day. And this is something we all know at the moment, probably. If you're listening to this and you don't know it, it's time to know it because these tools are definitely at that place right now where a lot of developers are saying we're not even, we're not touching the code. And that's a place where if developers aren't doing it, we certainly aren't going to either.
So let's dig in on how you used AI to create a deck, a proposal deck, right? And how we could, or any kind of PDF resource, maybe it's an ebook or whatever that outlines how this could be done. Like, let's just talk through that a little bit before we get into the work prototype.
Yeah, so I think the first, obviously the first step is they need to understand where their brand and style is. And I'm not I by no means am a branding expert. I was always a performance guy. Right, I got into the branding world mainly because my friend Mark DeGrasse was a great guy. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark. Started the AI Branding Academy. Wonderful guy, great resources. He was, we talked a lot about this, but what I did is simply, I'm not a branding guy, but what I do is I take the, there's tools out there like What the Font and Colorzilla, like free Chrome extensions, where I go on to their site, I select the font, I select the color, right? And I take that in. Now you can take this into a variety of tools. I'm going to talk about one particular right now, but Claude, design as a great example, where uploading a few screenshots, taking those color hex codes or the font names, and you plug it into the chat box there, and you say, hey, let's create a design system from this. And you don't have to say that, by the way, because it's a button in there, right? Quite literally, design system. You download the logo from their page, from their site. Most of the time, you can do this for right click. If not, you can screenshot it. Okay. And then you upload it there and you create a design system. Now, what this design system is very simple. It's a playbook of components, the code, the snippets for every type of assets you pretty much need, from headers to websites. It starts to build all these components for you for a design system based off that brand. If you show it a screenshot of the website, and it builds this beautiful, like unbelievable, highly detailed design system. Now, I'm not a designer, but again, it's plenty enough to create assets on a brand better than probably most of their employees, if not. And it's just.
I want to ask a couple of questions. Yeah, I want to ask a couple
Sure.
of questions about this. This is a relatively new thing. We're recording this in late May of 2026, and I think we're talking less than a month old, if I'm not mistaken. So with Claude Design, I believe you can use the Claude app on your computer, or you can use the web app. I'm pretty confident that that's accurate. So what I'm hearing you say is you can just put a screenshot in there, and Claude will probably understand what the font is just by looking at it, I would imagine. And you can right click and copy and paste in the logo, or do a Google search and try to find a vector version of the logo. But what Claude is going to do, it sounds like design, is it's going to discern what their color palettes are, right? It will just effectively do that, so you don't even need to understand that. And it will come up with some sort of a brand book, for lack of better words, where it will, help me understand a little bit about what that output is.
So that's a really good point. So, the design system is often like, it's a term in development, right? And user experience and user interface. But what's so interesting is that it's now become something that these coding tools that know the coding language, right, are using also for asset development and from presentations and so on. So design system, think of it as a brand guide, brand style guide of sorts. But in this case, think where it's created a really robust one with all the different types of, what does the top of the website look like? What does the footer look like? The different options of the different brand colors, it just creates quite literally, if you're to think about all the different assets, or what will the graph look like, and it creates a bunch of those components, so to speak, or different design elements, and places it in a folder for you to leverage with any other AI tool that you could just feed it to it and say, hey, make a presentation using this brand style guide or, design system.
So now you can create something that feels on brand, is what I'm saying, what I'm hearing you say, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So what do you do with this? How does this lead to a proposal ultimately?
Correct. So this can go in a few options. One, if you're using Claude Code and you're in that world of things, all you have to do, there's a button there that says share to Claude Code, and it just takes that sign, boop, brings it into your the design system, and you have it within your Claude Code environment. Anyone who's not on Claude Code, you can download this folder, you can do whatever you want with it, and you can feed it to any other language model, whether it's, Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT or Grok, whatever. And once you have it understand it, and whichever tool you're using, if it can create assets based off this, now you have the tone, and you have the, you have the color, you have the fonts. You don't necessarily have the tone and the style of conversation yet. Ideally, you gathered some of that in the initial research that you did, right? And you bring that in and you start to say, okay, now I am meeting with this person who wants this thing from your initial conversation, right? We have this research on them, and this is their design system. Let's brainstorm some ideas as to what a proposal may look like, and go through that process and then design it, and it will create it, and it will be stunning. And now that's a presentation or proposal. The app side of it, you can do in Claude Code or Replit or wherever environment you're happy with. The same idea, once you have the design system and the research side of it, you can start to brainstorm the different ways to go about it, and then just have it start to execute, and you'll see that you'll end up somewhere quite remarkable.
So in your particular case, tell us what you did specifically with this story, so we can continue this story and kind of what the outcome was.
Yeah, so this story, right? So we led to from the idea, did the research, created together a proposal. I built in Replit, I built a prototype of the app where I can actually click through it on the call we were on, right? And the reason I got, so they wanted to sign up. way, just to spoil, I think no one would think that I would tell a story where that doesn't end up. It was a deal that ended up being at about five. I think it was about 14,000 at the end for this one, for this development. I was already 80% of the way done with the project. And this is important to know too, right? Think about the delivery side of this, because I already had the prototype, already had their design system, already had so much of it. Just connecting a few things to make it more like a real app, and we were there. So that's the outcome is, from that conversation, we had our first conversation, they wanted to meet again, and they were stressed. They started to ask me questions as to when am I, do I have enough time for this? Suddenly you become the asset, and this is one of I'm happy to say and lucky to say, that's one of a good amount of stories from that type of asset creation before the meeting, the research. You show up. So, there's no one, again, if you show up to a meeting against someone who's done all this research and preparation and shows up ready and part of the team, it's going to be really hard to beat them. And I think anyone can get behind that idea. Right. So luckily the story ends there, and it's a good one at that. But what's the most interesting part? They said the reason I got the deal is because I did it based off exactly what they wanted. Right. So it all starts with that first clarity on what the outcome thereafter. And then everything else was this incredible kind of focus that, went into it, and they felt the pressure to just move because it's already there.
How much time do you feel like you invested before you closed the deal? Just so, because I'm sure a lot of people are like wondering how much work this was.
So I would say for this particular thing, I probably spent about 3 to 4 hours of my own time.
All right.
It's a good amount of time. But here's what I would say.
That's not unreasonable, right? You could easily spend that much time having calls with people, right?
Certainly, especially if you think, through what the outcome is of winning the deal and you calculate what that time is worth. But what I'll say more on that is my lens on that too is once I have that, it'd be really cool to know how to build a chat widget tool that you can create your own chat widgets and connect stuff. And I'm sure other people are going to want it. So in my mind, I'm also creating an asset that I can duplicate and leverage, which is a big piece of the AI building world. And I believe it's part of the new AI wealth side of this is everything you build is a reusable component that you'll be able to leverage now and tweak and change. And the more you build different things, different apps, different automations, different agents, it's now AI can take those things and have all these blocks to redeploy. So I really believe that for me, it's not a waste of time, even if I'm just messing around and tinkering for fun, but it's not really, because I know I'm A, going to win a new client, B, I'm going to have new assets I can redeploy or learn from as I'm doing other things. So it's really a win across all the domains.
Etan, Polinger, thank you, first of all, for sharing your insights and wisdom with us today. It's super exciting to hear this. And I know a lot of people are going to be jazzed about this. There's going to be some people that want to connect with you. If they want to connect with you on the socials, what's your preferred platform? And if they're possibly interested in working with you, where do you want to send them?
So I would say the best places right now to contact are one are in LinkedIn, and I'm sure we'll add a link here at the with the show notes. And another place that I spoke to the CEO of the Chief AI Officer community, where I am. That's where I mostly spend my time focused, and that's where we do our courses. And we'll provide free access for you guys to the community. So I'm sure we'll add that in there too. I'd say those are the two main places to meet up and chat if you're curious about what else we can do or want to learn more about what we're up to. But I often share in there different trainings and different events that we do. So it'll be great to have more folk out there.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Hey, thank you. Really, to be here is an honor. I appreciate it, and I hope we brought some value to your people. So, cheers, everyone.